buenas tardes a todos. Les agradezco mucho que nos acompañen en esta conferencia que va a pronunciar el ingeniero doctor Albrecht Haefner. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Thank you very much. Les voy a comentar un poco cuál va a ser la dinámica de esta presentación. El doctor Albrecht impartirá una conferencia de 40 minutos y después habrá otros 10 minutos para que podamos hacer preguntas. Les agradecería a todos ustedes que los que tengan alguna pregunta utilicen este papelito que se les dio para formularla aquí. De esta manera podremos ahorrar un poquito de tiempo. Bueno, sin más preámbulos, voy a hacer una breve reseña curricular del profesor Albrecht Haefner. Él estudió Ingeniería Eléctrica en la Universidad Técnica de Múnich, en Alemania. Empezó su carrera como ingeniero en los sistemas públicos de televisión y radio AEG Telefunken y FERS GmbH. Después ingresó a la SWR, Corporación Alemana de Radiodifusión. Inicialmente fue asistente personal del director técnico y después ya fue el encargado de la administración de los archivos sonoros de la radio. En esta corporación llevó a cabo los primeros trabajos de digitalización del archivo de radio y de almacenamiento masivo de un archivo de radio. Es por ello que Albrecht Haefner es reconocido a nivel internacional como pionero en los procesos de digitalización de archivos sonoros y en la creación del primer sistema de gestión y almacenamiento masivo digital de todo el mundo. Desde 1985 es miembro activo de la IASA, la Federación Internacional de Archivos Audiovisuales y Sonoros, donde tuvo el cargo de secretario general entre 1996 y 2002. Ha tenido una gran variedad de actividades como consultor e instructor en seminarios y talleres sobre archivos sonoros en diferentes países, como Irán, Tailandia, Indonesia, Singapur y muchos más. Recibió en el año 2004 y en el 2005 el premio IASA por su instrucción y desarrollo. Bueno, y no quiero quitar ningún minuto más al profesor Albrecht Haefner. Puede empezar cuando quiera.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. Esteemed Director Jaime Ortega, dear Perla Olivia Rodriguez, and dear colleagues and friends from the archival community, it is of course a great honor for me to have been invited to this international conference. Thanks to Perla Olivia, the driving force of this conference. My special thanks are directed to the Goethe Institute here in Mexico City that sponsored my flight from Germany. Prior to my lecture, let me confess that I've been retired since 2007 and am therefore not fully up to date with the latest archival developments. Nevertheless, 25 years of intensive live for and responsible work in a big radio sound archive remain unforgettable for me and result in a wealth of experience. This conference is dedicated in some way to sustainability, and I was immediately enthusiastic when I read the conference theme. Sustainability is a buzzword today. Hardly any term has developed as rapidly as sustainability. So what does sustainability mean? There's the rather sophisticated definition from the United Nations from 1987. Let me quote: "Humanity has the ability to make development sustainable, to ensure that it meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs." Quoted. In Germany, we have coined the catchword Enkeltauglichkeit, suitability for our grandchildren, because we have to leave to our children and grandchildren an ecologically, socially and economically intact system. Sustainability is a principle, an action principle for the careful use of resources, saying that you must not consume more than you can renew or regenerate. Saying sustainability is, of course, limited not only to environmental or climatic protection, it is essentially more. It goes actually without saying that digital audiovisual archives are absolutely sustainable institutions. The subject of my paper is historical and current perspectives of digital preservation. These are two chapters bound together. The current is the result of the historical. Therefore, I will first report about the story of my digital way and then, more or less as an outcome, give a brief survey of the current perspective of digital preservation. However, prior to that, allow me to start with the fundamentals of our archival business. Why archiving? Why do we archive? What is an archive good for? What is the raison d'être of archives? What is the archivist's responsibility? To collect knowledge, to preserve knowledge, in order to remember it and to disseminate knowledge is the basis of every culture. It's a fundament of every civilization. Structures of remembering, that is, of memories, have always been essential traits of all civilizations. And in this context, we can understand the establishment of libraries and archives and of collecting strategies. Well, I believe there is a global double raison d'être for every archive. The first is, archives are the memory of the society on its way from yesterday to tomorrow, from the past into the future. And in particular, documentary heritage reflects the diversity of languages, of peoples and cultures. It is a mirror of the world and its memory. And further, together with museums and libraries, archives hold and preserve the cultural heritage of the society and thus represent an essential part of its national identity. Therefore, it is the chief duty and the most important task of the archives to avoid any lapses or losses of that memory and further to support all means which help to preserve our cultural heritage. Now here are the four basic tasks of every archive. Well, this is a kind of definition set up by myself but widely accepted. We start with the acquisition, followed by documentation and cataloging. Then we have access. The purpose of archive holdings is to reuse them. Therefore, only an accessible archive is a good archive. And finally, we have preservation. Preservation is the most important task of the archivist because preservation is a prerequisite of access. Let me underline that all four basic areas have to be covered if an archive wants to be recognized as an archive. If access or preservation are missing, then the rest is not just justified to be called an archive. It is a collection only. But on the other hand, we should not forget that every archive is based upon a collection and starts with a collection. So finally, what is the archivist's responsibility? I think basically he has to deal with two categories, with double C. with his carriers and content, and he has to look in two directions, backwards as well as forward. He has to look backward to the time when the first audiovisual carriers came into being: headers and cylinders, Berliner discs, Sherlocks, acetate discs, steel reels, steel tapes, photographs, although this is not audiovisual, films, movies, videos. He should, of course, look not only to the technical format of the carriers, but also to the content and historical and cultural significance, relevance and value. So the archivist should look forward to keep pace with the challenges of the technical development, new storage media, new formats, new technologies. And we will see that the most influential development has been digital processing and all its attendant circumstances. And you should always also look forward to watch the challenges of media political development, for instance, new content or new services. And this could mean to see the changes for new archive business, for instance, content or asset management or multimedia. So far, the fundamentals of archival business. Now, my more or less pioneering work, my reflections and my findings on digitizations. About 1990, the sound engineers in my company began using digital equipment in their studios for pre-production. Increasingly, every time when they had to mix any analog material from the sound archives, they had to digitize it first. And this was the moment when I realized the confrontation with the outset of something new, the digital era. Consequently, looking into the future, the idea of a digital sound archive took shape in my mind. At that time, the holdings of my company's radio sound archive amounted roughly to 900,000 magnetic tapes, 300,000 vinyls, 300,000 CDs, completed by a number of singles, audio cassettes, DAT cassettes and pneumatic cartridges, with an annual growth rate of about 10,000 magnetic tapes and 15,000 CDs. That's no chicken feed. Around 1,000 sound carriers were provided daily for different in-house purposes. In 1992, we started with a task force on considerations about safeguarding the radio sound archives. First of all, dealing with all the everyday problems we were faced with, and of the numerous obstacles and difficulties restricting the availability and the access to archival material in the analog domain. Let me focus on the two most significant and essential ones. This is obsolescence. Come on. That is it. Obsolescence and condition monitoring. Yes. So, first, obsolescence. What is obsolescence? Obsolescence means it's a process of getting obsolete. Obsolete means old, out of date, out of fashion, gone out, run out. Obsolescence effects threaten archives permanently, every second, and are inherent archival phenomena. So we have to distinguish between different forms of obsolescence, and we have to distinguish between chemical obsolescence of the carriers, we have obsolescence of formats, and we have technical obsolescence of replay equipment. So, All storage media deteriorate chemically more or less. The speed of deterioration depending upon their physical nature and composition, and this is why we call that also carrier degradation. It depends also on the proper storage conditions, temperature and relative humidity, to call out two effects. Then we have audiovisual carriers, be it mechanical, magnetic or optical, are obsolete as soon as they are no longer manufactured. Hence, the availability of the production technology is limited. We call that formal obsolescence. And finally, a device such as an audiovisual replay equipment is obsolete if it is no longer in service. The spare parts are available for maintenance and repair. We call that technical obsolescence. In the long term, obsolescence effects are the archivist's biggest enemies. They must try to repeat it. Now, condition monitoring. Only regular condition monitoring, quality control, condition check informs you about the deteriorating status of the carriers in a collection, whether they are still in a health condition or just endangered, indicating that necessary safeguarding measures have to be taken. And this is the most time and cost consuming duty. Why? With analog carriers in your holdings, condition checks can be performed only manually, there's no automat, and in real time. It is the only method to find out in which condition your collection is. And if you do not carry out regular condition check, you are sitting atop a volcano. By the way, condition monitoring, even if continuously carried out, will not prevent carriers from a final decay, whether in 10 or in 100 years' time. This is very important. This is of utmost importance. It means that an eternal carrier does not exist ultimately. And this provokes the question whether the carrier or the information has to be kept. As a consequence, we have to change we had to change our archival mentality entirely. It is not the carrier, but the information embedded in or on it that has to be preserved. It is really an immense, or wasn't really an immense paradigm shift. Yes, in the long term, the information embedded in the carrier is first priority. In the first line, it is the information we have to preserve. Storage carriers and formats play a secondary role only. Now let me explain how I found that digital technology is the only way to overcome all the problems we are faced with in the analog domain, in particular these obviously insurmountable problems of obsolescence and condition monitoring. Digital. Digital means countable, and the origin is Latin digitus, the finger. When the old Romans counted, they said numerare digitis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is digital. Contrary to the analog signal, the digital signals can take on only discrete, defined values at discrete time intervals, and therefore represents a physical process by an incremental step-like course. Digitization is a replacement of the continuous course of an analog signal's value by an equivalent incremental course in order to allow the steps to be allocated numerical, and this is allocated digital. It is division into constant absolute units, the principle of counting small steps. Well, that sounds rather sophisticated, but there's a wonderful example which you are familiar with. This is money. Every currency is based on a small unit, and currency is digital. Very simple. So, that's only the first step. The fundamental further stage is binary coding of the digital signal. Today, if you talk about digitization and digital signals, we mean a binary signal. So what is a binary signal? Binary means twofold, capable of two values, consisting of two units. Two is emphasized, underlined. There are some simple examples: on-off. Yes, no, black, white, high, low, and things like that. Only two different states need to be distinguished one from the other. And please remember, in the decimal system we have 10 different symbols. And this is a no method. It's the most foolproof principle there is in signal processing. This is a superior advantage of digital over analog technology to reduce a signal consisting of infinite many physical values down to only two states. A simpler solution is not possible. Not. As a consequence of utmost importance of this yes-no method, as long as two states can be differentiated, a digital signal is basically reconstructible, even if it has undergone alteration. This is totally impossible with analog signals. Why? Because binary coded signals have always a well-known and well-defined rectangular shape and nothing else. And this is why they are reconstructible. This is not possible with analog signals. And this is a decisive advantage of digital over analog signal processing and the most important reason for digitization. In the analog domain, signal alterations are either no detectable, or if detectable, the reconstruction is impossible, or it's difficult, or it's expensive. Result compared to the analog signal processing, the accuracy of which is limited by imprecisions such as reading, measuring, processing, and transmission errors, mechanical wear, aging, and external effects such as temperature and the like. Digital signal processing is more efficient, is more precise, and most secure. And most of all, there is a feature of lossless copying. Lossless copying, contrary to analog duplication, which is always lossy. However, substantially higher bandwidth, this is higher bit rate, and larger storage capacity is needed. Well, attention. Let's assume we have just digitized an AV collection. What results have we got so far? Our collection is transferred onto a new storage medium and into a new format. Question: has the transfer eliminated obsolescence? No, it hasn't. Digital formats get obsolete too. The next obsolescence is sure to come in the foreseeable future, forcing us to reduplicate the collection once more onto another technical platform and or another storage medium and or another format, causing again efforts in terms of manpower, material and equipment. The one and only progress we have achieved, no more copy losses. But we have to realize that digitization alone does not really solve the problem of obsolescence. It simply postpones it only. Would that mean the steady transfer again and again and nothing else? So what is the way out? Well, digitization is done by means of a computer. And the costly manpower, that is manual work, has to be replaced by automated computer-controlled systems. So what is this manual work? Analog audiovisual content threatened by obsolescence effect has to be transferred, has to be migrated onto a storage medium, a process that is always lossy and can be performed only manually in the real time, as I just mentioned. The same is true for condition monitoring of analog AV content. However, as soon as the content is available as digital signals, as files, then they can easily be automated by means of a computer-controlled storage system. That is totally impossible with analog signals. So digital AV signals are of course also threatened by obsolescence, but unlike the analog signals, they can be duplicated and stored by means of a controlling computer, lossless and automatically. And the result is away from manual transfer towards automated migration. Well, what are the features requested for such an automated migration? It must be computer controlled. Data must be stored digitally, of course, and data must be kept redundant for error correction purposes. And with these features, an automated system will work. Auto-controlling, that means the system itself checks the integrity of its data. It is auto-regenerating. The system itself checks, it repairs corrupt data, and we call it, by the way, refreshing. And finally, this system is auto-transferring. The system itself repairs corrupt data and transfers data automatically by migration. And these features mean nothing else than to overcome obsolescence effects and offer permanent condition monitoring. Yeah. As soon as you have such an automated system in use, then you might finally forget the question, what is the life expectancy of this or that format? Well, those were the results of my reflections. To have such a system was my dream. And at that point, a pure but lucky chance put me on the right track. At an exhibition dealing with satellite-based communication in 1993, Sony presented their digital instrumentation recorder, DIR-1000. This is a digital master system with a storage capacity within the terabyte range. Just that was I looking for. Well, those systems have been used since the early 1980s for data storage, mainly by EDP departments, scientific as well as military applications, and a variety of such devices has been offered on the market. There have been installations in branches which have to store vast quantities of data, such as assurance companies and bank institutes. Also, other services which create a great many data within a very short time period prior to final data processing, such as interferometry used in cosmic ray research, or Earth observation by satellite-based remote imaging have made use of digital mass storage systems. Okay, hence the technology was already available. It was only the application in a sound archive which was new, and this was my idea. All we had to do was to see how such a digital mass store could be applied to our requirements. So in 1996 we started a pilot project for 2 years with such a digital master, and the outcome it was a digital master is the only successful way to overcome the problems in front of us. And in 2000 the call for tenders, evaluation, recommendation and award followed. So far the history, now the current and future perspectives. Having a computer-controlled AV storage, obsolescence effects and condition monitoring are no longer a nightmare for us. Confronting of conventional analog with digital technology, there are many more advantages of digitization. And here's a list of these advantages. Permanent availability and accessibility. All files in the digital master are at any time available. No physical carriers such as tapes and discs are in use. The benefit, as soon as the entire or main parts of the holdings have been transferred into the digital master, no staff is needed anymore. Reasonable saving of staff resources and released staff can be used for digitization of analog material further. Multiple access, parallel use is possible at any time. User have at any time access to all parts of the holdings, no staff needed. The benefits, as no more copying is needed, saving of staff resources, saving of money for new carriers, saving of machinery resources. No longer shelves and racks, no special storage facilities needed as hard disk arrays are part of the digital master. The benefits, saving of investment and operation costs. It's not the end, we have no more. Access from any point of the world. Thanks to the internet. The internet allows access even from or to overseas. No longer wear and tear, damaged or lost carriers. A digital master is a closed system. No external manipulations by users possible. For instance, improper treatment of hard disks or cartridges. Benefits, no additional monitoring, a needed saving of money for staff and machinery. Copying faster than in real time. High data rates reduce essentially the time for copying. No longer labeling and housing. Physical carriers need special protective containers, as you will know. Cardboard boxes, cassettes, cartridges, cover sleeves, and things like that. Containers need labeling and marking that is no longer necessary. The benefits, again, saving of material costs and personnel resources. Considerably less storage space. As a result of the miniaturization of all system parts, essentially less storage space is required. Nearly no air conditioning, no efforts against dusty air and electromagnetic stray fields. Special storage conditions only in a much lesser extent needed. Benefit, substantially reduced expenditures for air conditioning, which might be very expensive, as you know. Essential savings of investment and operation costs. Operation around the clock. Holdings are available and accessible 24 hours around the clock without staff. Despite the continuous availability and accessibility, no additional staff needed. Benefits saving of funds. Fast transfer files. High data rates reduce essentially time for quiet affairs. Extremely large storage capacity today, storage capacities of petabytes and even more are possible. And finally, last but not least, extremely low error rate, error correction by creating redundancy by adding additional bits, for instance parity bits or checksums. So in other words, away from the ephemeral carrier towards the eternal file. So here's my short conclusion. It is true, there are considerable efforts and time and funds necessary to digitize an AV collection, but we have to do that only once and never again. Let's remember the meaning of sustainability to close the circle. We have to leave to our children and grandchildren an ecologically, socially and economically intact system. This is of course true for leaving our audiovisual heritage to the future generations. And digitization makes it possible, and this is why digital AV archives are sustainable. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias por esta magnífica presentación. Creo que ha sido muy interesante para todos los asistentes y en la que hemos podido ver tanto un poco el recorrido hacia el pasado como hacia el futuro, los retos que se presentan para la preservación digital y, bueno, y las ventajas que tienen los archivos digitales hoy en día. Creo que, bueno, que también tienen sus retos por delante, porque la obsolescencia es un proceso que también atañe a los soportes digitales. Tenemos una pregunta de Gerardo León Lastra, de la Filmoteca de la UNAM, México.
My dear, the king of digitalization, may I have a talk to you? You have a talk for me? Thank you very much. But what would you recommend to all the libraries in Latin America that have a huge? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Please read my body.
Yeah.
It shows what I mean. What would you recommend to all the archives in Latin America that have huge storage of 2-inch tapes, 1-inch tapes, a lot of original materials? You put up a long list of advantages for the new digitalization, and I don't think any will object to that. But what about the old tapes? Is there any value at all? Or shall we just move them to National Archive, ask them to preserve them, to take care of them? Is there any value of the old tapes?
Yes, there is.
And one more question. Yeah. When shall an archive in Latin America start with digitalization? How far can they go using the old material up to a certain point due to investigation? Thank you.
Well, the originals, yes, be it quarter-inch tapes or any other magnetic tapes, or acetate discs and things like that. You should not throw away them, and you should keep them as long as possible. It is, of course, a question of funds. If you have the funds, our recommendation of IASA is keep them as long as possible, because improvements in digitization technology is possible. And here are the second question. Even analog archives in Latin America should start with digitization as soon as possible, because we have the problem of replay equipment. I told you there's a problem of obsolescence, and it's better to start now as to shift the digitization to a later time period. There's a danger then obsolescence of replay equipment and even other obsolescence effects. That's my answer.
Gerardo León Lastra, de la Filmoteca de la UNAM, hace un comentario referente a que también habría que preservar el software, los programas que permiten decodificar un soporte digital y también esos programas que permiten migrar de un formato digital a otro. Con respecto a esos programas, a esos software, también habría que preservarlos, pero ¿cómo? ¿Quién sería el encargado de hacerlo?
Yes, it's absolutely right. You should. Absolutely right. You should also hardware and especially software keep as long as possible. I think this is the task of an archive, or it's the owner of the archive. And every archivist should be aware of this problem. And if possible, speak with the owner of the archive, and there's not only the carriers, there are also hardware and software. That's absolutely right.
Okay, thank you. Otra pregunta. Julio Setter, de la Dirección General de Bibliotecas de la UNAM, le pregunta que en su opinión cuáles serían los principales retos que tendrían que enfrentar las sociedades digitales en el futuro con respecto a los mecanismos de preservación.
Well, if I have understood this question correct, I think okay. The society in general is a problem for this kind of dangers, for this kind of threatening things, threatening an archive. People like to watch TV, to look to radio, to hear to the CD, and this is nice, and that's all. So of course we, the specialists, the experts, the archivists, although the owners of an archive, they have to enlighten the people, society, that there's a problem. Otherwise, they lose their memory. We always keep in mind, archives are the memory of the society, as I started my paper. And what will happen if an archive goes away, apart, and there is no music from Mozart, no books from Goethe or whatsoever. This means that a part of our memory has gone with the wind, and this should be made clear to all people. That's my answer.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Hello? So, I raised the question on keeping the programs as well as the information.
Yeah.
There are times that what you get is not, maybe even a piece of a chip that does the work to decode a particular format. And this chip belongs to some company. The knowledge, how it's done and how it works, belongs to some company. So, if I rely on a chip, or even in a piece of software, I don't have a guarantee that keeping the program will keep my archive surviving. I'm not sure if you get the question. It's like the snake eating its tail.
Yeah.
Is it clear? The question.
It is clear. Yes. Well, the first steps is that somebody decides that digitization is necessary and has to be done. And then the next decision is what parts of an archive, sound archive in my case, or the audiovisual archives, should be digitized. Now this is a decision that should always be made by an expert. Sometimes that is not possible, unfortunately.
Hopefully not.
Yes.
We're digitizing films. So
Yes. I understand you fully, of course. Yes. In an exact case, there is always somebody. There's a specialist who decides over what has to be digitized first and what has digitized further at the end, and step by step. At my company, for instance, we had an exact plan what to digitize first and what to digitize then, and below that we decided also to digitize on demand of the editors, because the editors, you know, my company is a broadcasting corporation. Broadcasting is cast to people who wish to listen to music or to the word. So we have a plan what to digitize really, step by step, and further on to digitize on demand. This was our decision. And I think this was a good division, and I can only hope that in other archives this is also the case. Okay?
Yeah.
Good.
But also let me just make the comment that probably what we should do is to rely on open software and open hardware.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I'm an optimist in this case. I'm really optimistic that we can rely on modern digitization methods and people who decide on that.
Thank you.
No sé si tenemos tiempo para alguna última pregunta. Si alguien más se anima, todavía tenemos tiempo para una más.
Hola, gracias por su presentación. Yo tenía una pregunta sobre la clasificación del material en un archivo digital. Generalmente tendemos a pensar que es más fácil clasificar el material en un archivo digital, pero me parece que hay un proceso muy complejo de clasificación que tiene que ver también con la manera en que ese material va a estar accesible después. Esto implica una serie de clasificaciones internacionales, nacionales, de biblioteca. ¿Qué puede decir usted sobre este tema?
I don't see this problem, especially not in the audio field. In the audio field, it was from scratch, from start on, it was clear we use a wave format, because there wasn't other format. And wave format is also flexible, low quality and high quality. And our philosophy is we have to digitize in the best possible quality, that means high end. The problem is, there's this problem in video, of course. There are, as far as I'm informed, did I get you the...
I'll try it in English.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say is that, for example, each file has to be accompanied by a series of metadata.
Yeah.
And this metadata is also, I think, even a more complex process than when we categorize just an image or a song in traditional archives. So my question was, what do you think about this complex process of including metadata in the information that would make this piece of archive something that can be found and consulted later?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the idea is not just to have digital archives, but to have everything that we have in these digital archives to be able to, for people, to be, I don't know how to say, but people have to know that these documents are there. And when we have everything in a digital version, I think it's not so simple.
Well, at least in the audio field, it is simple because there is a format that is called broadcast wave format. And this sees that the metadata can be stored together with the signal itself in one set. It is up to you to decide whether you can use this broadcast wave format or not. If you decide not to use this format, you can use, of course, other formats, but you have a certain link from the digitized signal to the metadata. You can do it in form of a link or anything else. And this is a must.
I would like to add something. This is a perfect solution, however very difficult to apply. I'm speaking in English, so. Because you can put together the content and the description, whatever information you want to associate, but you have to be sure the systems that use that information keep it together always. And this happens. All the major video formats, take MPEG-2, consider the possibility of adding the metadata to the content. But the machines that work with MPEG-2 simply erase them. So the problem is not, the idea is very good, the practical application is very complex.
Thanks, Daniel. You're absolutely right. By the way, I'm not a metadata specialist, and I'm not a video specialist. Okay, any more comments and questions? Everything is clear, I see.
Sí, creo que ha quedado todo muy claro. Bueno, pues muchísimas gracias Albrecht Haefner por esta magnífica charla. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I give you a